What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. So today, I kind of want to talk about kind of the differences of bare bottom versus sand in the tank. I know there's lots of different opinions on it and which one people like and for what reasons. What's going on, Lisa? What's going on, Geradicate? Awaken? Who else we got in the chat? Lisa. Cravon. Welcome, Cravon. Got Radicate, Ryan, what's going on? HB Aquariums. Davis, how you doing, guys? Who else am I missing? Dre's Salty Aquatics, what's going on? Call Man, Passionate Reef. Happy Wednesday, guys. Is this going to be a Discord? Actually, I go back to we're using Hangouts again. I know, a little over the place. There's the Hangouts link. Let me know if that works. I have Cruz on the chat so far, hanging out, and whoever wants to do it. Euphoric Reptiles, Team Sandbed. Yep, I'm not gonna lie, I'm Team Sandbed too. What's going on, Dr. Wilson Magic? What's going on, Ryan? So if you guys do want to try it, let me know if that link works. Just to check. Hopefully it does. Should. I pre-tested it just to try and make sure. If it doesn't work, we'll use Discord, but I did slow Cruz to join earlier and then topped off, so it should be working. What's going on, Ravencaw? What's going on, Curtis? How are you guys doing? Da Vinci, welcome. Unknown Reefer. So, hopefully everyone's having an excellent Wednesday. So, one of the things, there seems to be the kind of age-old semi-debate of do you do sandbed or do you not do sandbed in Hey Blakey Fish? But at the end of the day, it really does come down to personal preference, but I mean, there is definitely arguments for both sides of it, right? Personally, I prefer having a sandbed. I think it looks more natural. It gives you a little more flexibility with fish. So, you know, like certain wrasses and stuff, they sleep in the sand. Or if you want, there's lots of little creatures like that live in the sandbed. So having a sandbed gives you more options. Now, a couple of things to consider is it also does buffer your chemicals to an extent, right? So if it can kind of buffer your calcium alkalinity to a certain extent. So there's a few big benefits. I mean, it could also be a bigger surface area for bacteria. Back in the day, deep sand beds was a huge thing, and that was to, host that denitrifying bacteria that'll eventually help your tank. Now, some people still do this. I hear Fortnite in the background.
Yeah, that's me. Sorry.
No problem. I know that little beep. But yeah. So it does hold bacteria, right? It buffers it. It's more natural in a way. It's gonna give a lot of your wrasses or cleaners. Hey, can I get you mute yourself for a sec, just to kill the gunshots in the background?
Got to mute it.
Yeah, just mute yourself for now if you're not talking. Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers, thanks.
Yeah, so because the Argonite does have a certain buffering capacity, so I mean that helps quite a bit. Now a couple potential downsides is it could collect detritus and different things in there. Fishy snowman, I need a ReefDude shirt. I still gotta get my button gear and find somewhere online they'll do print on demand, because the biggest thing is I just don't want to deal with shipping everywhere, because shipping in Canada is overly priced. So my goal is if I can find somewhere that will like drop ship it, then I can just do it online and then they'll mail it instead of me having to worry about it. Yeah, so maintenance wise, not having a sand bed is definitely a benefit on the maintenance side of things, right? If you don't have, there's much easier you can have higher flow. I mean, you can really rock your water like crazy. You don't have to worry about sand dunes and stuff blowing around. And so that's kind of a plus for not having a sand bed, right? Some people prefer the look without it. Some people like the less maintenance. If there's one little spot I tried, it's super easy to vacuum and suck it out. Now, another downsides. I mean, most people use black. I mean, I've seen tanks with corals and crust over the bottom, like chalices and stuff. It actually looks really cool. However, for the most part, personally, I prefer a sand bed. I like the more natural look. And there's some other benefits too. Another thing with white sand, for instance, you're going to get more light reflection back up to the undersides of corals, right? Where if you have a black bottom, you might not necessarily get that. So I do a couple people in the chat. So we got Refugium, we got Cruz, and we got Tank ... I don't know what your full name on there is. So a few different kind of perks. Remote deep sandbeds, fine grain display shell sandbeds, bare bottom frag tanks, just my preference. Yeah, so now if you, on that note of remote sand, so if you don't have sand in your display tank, I mean, that's a good chunk of surface area you're giving up. So some people will still do a deep sand bed in their sump, or there's other stuff you can use like marine pier or other types of ceramic media in your sump or somewhere else to do it to kind of make up for not having it in your tank. So the main reason people don't do it is mainly just for cleanliness. Either super high flow. What's going on, Jeff? Daily reefing. So yeah, having it remotely definitely does save you on a bit of maintenance. That being said, some people vacuum their sand beds, some people don't touch them at all. Then the other kind of question that goes into is, do you have a shallow sand bed? Do you have a deep sand bed? Like back in the day, everyone was like, yeah, a deep sand bed must be like 3, 4 inches, 5 inches deep. That was a huge thing. These days, everyone says super shallow sand bed, right? So it's kind of funny how things change over time as technology changes, as reefers grow, we learn new things. Now, potential downfalls of quote unquote deep sand beds can be if it's creates an anaerobic thing and you're disturbing it too much and releasing sulfates and gases and stuff in your water that could potentially be harmful. Now, I don't think this is a huge issue that I've ever personally seen, unless maybe you're like disrupting massive amounts of area at one point. In a super deep sand bed, maybe it is releasing those extra sulfites, but the odd little bit here and there isn't really gonna do much in my experience. I don't know if you've ever had any potential issues with that or not, Cruz, but on my side hasn't really been an issue that I've seen.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we try to degas as best as possible. We do various methods and stuff like that to actually drive off a lot of the metabolic waste gases.
So how about in your eyes, do you prefer the zero sand bed, shallow sand bed?
Well, it's a medium medium sand bed, enough for the wrasses to actually bury themselves into. We utilize wrasses as main I want to say a pest eradicator.
Yeah, pest control.
Or a controller. Exactly. So in order to have those wrasses, they do enjoy the sand bed.
Yeah.
They like to hide, they like to cocoon in there. Little things like that. Kind of like
Oh, we just lost him. So yeah, I had a call with Jay a little while ago and we were talking about that. And in his tank, same thing. This one thing to necessarily consider right up front was that a lot of the wrasses need somewhere to sleep, right? So some wrasses do sleep in the rock. Like my fairy wrasse, for instance, sleeps in the rock, but my leopard wrasse sleeps in the sand bed. So you definitely need to have the sand bed for a lot of these little different creatures. Now, one thing I thought was kind of a cool compromise, I thought about doing this, and Jay did this in one of his videos. I'm kind of curious to follow along see how it turns out. But he did an epoxy sand bed. So he took epoxy and, and put it over sand. So basically it's a fake sand bed, but it looks like you have a sand bed, which is kind of a cool kind of middle ground of the two.
So. Absolutely. But once again, the wrasses, they see the sand. They'll try to dive at it. They will injure themselves.
Yeah, good point.
Hit it. So.
Yeah, I was kind of suggesting, have a corner of real sand or somewhere they can actually sleep in it. But yeah, it's a good point though. It may mess with your fish.
Yep. But no, great ideas. But yeah, I mean, we love watching the critters crawl across the sand. You could actually see like lines of the hermit crab just dragging their shell across the freaking sand bed. It looks like little rake marks. Cool.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, so you're obviously a fan of the sand beds.
Yeah.
Now, one of
definitely.
the points earlier was sand actually has a certain buffering capacity, so it's going to help lessen your parameter swings to a certain extent.
Correct. I mean, especially when you get into the deeper areas where you could actually go anaerobic, and it produces the hydrogen sulfide or, some other type of acidic metabolic gas, it can actually, how do you say it, buffer against that pH drop, due to lactic acid production. Because there's believe it or not, in a fish tank or in an enclosed aquarium type system, lactic acid is produced. A lot of people overlook that in the hobby. I know that we see it in my daily work. I see lactic acid as being measured for cellular respiration.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I might have some, how do you say it, a little bit of kudos in playing around with instrumentation that normal hobbyists don't have
That's a nice
or have
perk.
access to. Yeah, and they do have the lactic acid sensors that are
Mhm.
handheld.
Yep.
But my God, they are expensive,
Ah.
very expensive. And the calibration time is every 6 months.
Yeah, so it's up there, right? All right, so
Oh yeah, and it's about $300
Whew.
a time to actually get it calibrated.
Oh yikes, that's up there. All right, so Cody's asking, what are the downsides to having sand? It's a pretty good biofilter. Personally, I don't think there is a ton of downsides. A lot of people say it's just harder to clean it. If you have a bunch of detritus and extra poop and different things in your building up in your tank, it could potentially build up in the sand. Now, there's two thoughts on that as well, right? Some people clean the sand beds once in a while, and some never touch it.
Yep.
They just leave it
Yep.
as is for eternity and let the bacteria do its thing.
Correct. I mean, there's only so much that the bacteria can do, and if you actually take a look at, you know, you've seen the videos on National Geographic and stuff like that, you see still like what we call snow, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's already digested, you know, some of the fibrous stuff that the bacteria has not been able to have a chance to attack yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And they also need the pressure, the temperature, and also the certain enzymes that actually are heavier in seawater.
Yeah.
So you get, you know, that perfect environment for them to actually digest. I mean, you know, some of the fibers, kind of like, you know, how cows are able to digest fibrous, you know, vegetation and stuff like that. They have extra guts here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, bacteria will take into consideration environmental conditions and be able to actually break down almost everything, including bone, in the ocean.
Really, eh? That's quite a bit. So
Yep.
now with that, to not have to clean your sand as much, I mean, there's lots of little creatures you can get, like sand-sifting starfish, Nasaria snails, and little hermit crabs. Like, there's all these little creatures that will crawl around and help stir up your sand, wrasses, for instance. So, especially with a deep sand bed, it was always a good idea. Like, one say don't disturb it, and the other side, you want creatures in there to build it up and disturb it so it doesn't build up any sulfates or gases eventually. Now, you have, like, a lot of times, like, mine's probably, I'm going to say 1 to 3 inches, depending where you are in the tank. And it kind of goes. And I have lots of little creatures in the sand. Now, I personally do clean my sand bed. Not very often, but every once in a while I like to just pick a little chunk and clean it. Just for preventative or whatever. Like, it makes me feel better. Usually what it is I'll see a little bit of grunginess on the edge of the glass, and then I'll clean up the front edge, and then I'll just pick a different little 20% area and just go at it and just give it a thing when I do a water change. So that's kind of what I do. Like, for instance, Rico, when I was talking to him in the past, like, he said he never vacuums the sand. He's never done it. So, two totally different kind of ways of doing it. Yeah, and then a couple of guys, you guys know the chat, were just saying about on there with corals growing on and GSP. And, like, a GSP carpet looks really cool once it gets to the edge of the glass. So, I mean, it's a bit of work and maintenance to keep the GSP and certain things from glowing off the glass, but... So curious, how about you? Do you clean your sand beds, or you just let nature do its thing?
We clean our sand bed. We stir it up, section at a time. You know, kind of like what you were saying earlier. You know, being that our sand bed isn't as deep as they used to be, or what was popular back in the day.
Yep.
We don't feel that we've trapped enough detritus. We don't think that we've, you know, created too much of an anaerobic area that's impacted. And then once again, we do have, you know, nice cleanup crews that actually go into the sand. You know, a goby that drives me nuts every time he covers up a nice coral because he doesn't like it.
One of the orange spots, or which goby? Or blue spot, orange spot? Diamond, yeah.
Gobies.
So,
and I mean, yeah, they're fun to watch when they're not burying your corals.
yes. So diamond gobies, amazing sandbed cleaners. They'll keep your sandbed looking nice and white. However, they take a big handful of sand, and usually will end up on whatever sandbed corals you have. So, anyone ever kept a tiger tail cucumber? Pros, cons. How much sand? I have not. I've not kept a cucumber, but they are pretty good cleaners.
Yeah.
They do an amazing job
The
keeping.
only thing, yeah. the only thing that I would worry about any type of cucumber or any type of like a sea apple or
Mm.
something like that is the ability to actually pollute a tank
Does they ever
when they
bite the
die.
dust? Yeah.
Exactly. Especially if there's like not enough food or they start wasting away, and then all of a sudden, this fish decides that it becomes its food.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a lot of waste all of a
And
sudden.
exactly,
Yeah.
they kill it, they attack it, they eat it, and then they let the rest of it decompose, which is what a waste.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I would be leery of cucumbers, sea apples, and stuff like that, especially in a small system.
Hmm. Just in the chat, Murphy was asking, what works better, central overflow box or opposite side of the return nozzle? Either can work well, but I mean, in an ideal world, you'd probably have your output the opposite side as the overflow, so it forces the water across the tank.
Hmm.
I would say it'd be ideal,
Yeah,
but
I like coast to coast
hmm,
myself,
yeah,
if possible.
just do a whole wall.
Yeah, and with the new low profile ones
Hmm.
that we've seen lately, almost like the ghost overflows and
Yep.
stuff like that. It's really low profile, and you could actually reclaim some of the extra real estate on the bottom of the sand bed.
Hmm. No, exactly.
Instead of having a column,
Yep.
in the middle, or anything else like that.
Hmm. No, it does open quite a.
The central, yeah, exactly, and the central overflow, like an island or a peninsula type of an aquarium, you have to remember fish do tend to want to go down into the overflow every once in a while.
Mhm.
It's going to be hell trying to get it out of the central overflow that's
Mm.
away from the walls.
No, very true.
So just FYI on
Yeah.
that.
Now, a couple minutes ago, I was also asking too about some of the potential downfalls or negatives of a sand bed. The only other one
Hmm.
would be that I'd say is it's can be somewhat limiting in how you do your flow. You can't necessarily
Hmm.
blast crazy amounts of flow, otherwise you're just going to be creating giant sand dunes and blowing sand all over your tank. Now, to kind of
Right.
counteract that, you can go to a larger grain size or do more like crushed coral or bigger chunks, right? I've
Hmm.
always been a fan of the special grade reef sand because I prefer the sandy look, but that's kind of the
Hmm.
biggest quote unquote sand particle size that I could find. So that's what I use my tank, special grade reef sand. Now the other thing I've also
Hmm.
done is move my pumps up a bit higher, so there's more distance between the top and the sand bed, just so there's less sand duning going on
Hmm.
down there. Hmm.
And one of the other things that we've also utilized, and once it goes, once again, it does go back to, the aeration,
Hmm.
utilizing some bubbles to actually increase and enhance flow.
Hmm.
Instead of increasing velocity, and laminar flow, utilizing water, the wave makers. The water pushes on the bubble pushes on some more water. Do you know what I'm saying? And it
Hmm.
creates this, I want to call it a domino effect, where it's kind of like taking a billiard ball, right? The white cue ball, and hitting a triangle of the balls, that are racked up. And then that dispersion is what I would consider the water.
Oh, just lost you. All right, so maybe back to Discord next week because Hangout seems to drop again.
Can you hear me, Dev?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So on that note, I'm
Hmm.
running the Fiji Pink in my Nano,
Yep.
but in my 75, I just went to the black aragonite gravel.
Hmm.
Besides it may have magnetic particles in it, all that stuff.
Hmm.
I know I can't do a sand sifting goby. The particles are too large.
Hmm.
Um, Even though my LFS does it, I've seen them have a couple sand sifters die because they get a big piece caught in their throat.
Oh, really? Eh?
Yeah, they had one day.
Ouch.
I walked in there, and I said, "Oh, you got a dead goby." And the guy pulled it out. He said, "Look, you look down in it. There's a big black rock stuck in where his gills are."
What size or what was the? That was just from using the black sand.
Yeah, it's the Carib Sea, the black aquarium gravel though, not the
Mm,
sand.
gotcha.
It's a fine gravel,
Mm.
or I guess a coarse sand. Like 3 to 5 millimeter particles.
Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
and so, what sand sifters can I use?
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me, sand sifter and gobies are out of the question anyway because they'll just end up as grouper food. But could I still use sand sifting starfish? I know I could get away from the serious snails. What about fighting conchs?
Oh, those guys are awesome. Okay,
Yep.
so I have 3 in my large reef, and yeah, I can't speak for the black rock sand stuff. I never used it, but with the stuff in my tank, they do an amazing job keeping it clean.
I mean, just picking brains here. Are there any thoughts, issues y'all could foresee with getting them for the coarser grade stuff? I mean, I don't think that would be a problem because they don't actually
Yeah, they don't.
filter it.
Yeah, they don't actually eat it. They just kind of surface clean it. So I'd say you're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and remember that there's other sand organisms, like the sand crabs and stuff like that. You also have the spaghetti worms that are also detritus eaters. And you got your other, benthic, I want to call them substrate cleaners. You know what I'm saying? Other types of worms.
Yeah.
Not only that, but yeah.
Go ahead. No, finish your statement.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, and if you also have a large population of copepods, the babies actually hide in the sand. You can see it on the glass.
And that should apply for that coarser stuff, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Because now it has caves, basically. Because
Gotcha.
they don't lay and they don't typically impact on each other. So there's a lot of areas, a lot of caverns, a lot of tunnels at that microscopic level, for them to actually burrow in and find food, eat detritus. Because once again, amphipods, copepods, they're opportunistic, right? They find whatever organics that they could eat, be it plant matter or meat, protein matter, and they'll go to town on it. They will help you decompose it.
Okay.
So
Because I just
Bristle worms
switched
are
from
also
bare
pretty
bottom.
good too.
yeah. So
Yeah.
Okay.
someone was just asking, do you know if cucumbers would happen to eat a spaghetti worm?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't know.
Never really seen it.
Yeah, me neither. You just brought up a great point though with considering copepods and all that stuff. I mean, a lot of them do live in the sand, and they're in the rock and the sand or whatever. So not having a sand bed would potentially be taking out a huge place for them to hide and dwell within your tank. So there's a lot less food for certain fish that go filter through your sand in different areas. Something else to consider too for the bare bottom folk.
Yeah. Exactly. And then there's also the bristleworms, the bristleworm babies. They're very, very tiny. So they can actually navigate that coarser sand or coarser sand type.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so Jeff was saying he has the Coraline Aquarium gravel. He's had those with, I believe he said he had the sand sifting gobies, and no issue. But yeah, it's just something to consider too if it's kind of that, in the middle size where it could swallow it. Yeah. Carib Sea black sand, worst mistake for me. Too many particles sticking to the magnets. Yeah, so just for whoever doesn't know, the black sand, it looks cool because it gives your corals that extra color pop, but it has magnetic properties. So it will stick to your cleaner if you get too close to the sand bed. It's going to attract those sand particles, which can in turn get stuck between the magnet and scratch your glass. So you do have a higher risk of scratching your glass. You got to be extra careful if you do have black sand. So something to keep in mind.
I mean, I've only had it for a day, but like I talked to the LFS because this is what he runs in all of his show tanks.
Yeah.
Not his show tanks, all of his stock tanks. His big show tanks, one of them has this, and then the big 1200 he's in the process of cycling right now actually has the fine sand, but that's because he wants to put sand sifters and all that kind of stuff in there to show off and kind of do like a full reef ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so it's basically a 1200 peninsula is how he's setting it up with high rock work in the back, and it slopes all the way down, to about 2 feet of sand bed on the end, 3 feet of sand bed on the end.
Oof. Wow.
And so I'll have to get y'all pictures, but I was
Nice.
talking with him about it, and that's what he said. He said, yeah, it's magnetic, but, and he showed me, he said, it's not like magnet to magnet attraction. You take it, you shake it, and most of the little particles will fall off. And so what I actually did, I laid this out in the underbed Rubbermaids. I had an extra one. Laid it out in there yesterday before I put it in the tank, and then passed a high-powered, I've got a big shop magnet a big shot magnet over it, and it, you know, anything that it drew out, I just brushed off into the trash can first. And so, but I use the blade side most of the time anyway, which won't be a problem.
Yeah. Now, if you have an acrylic tank, you probably got to worry a little bit more. Glass, you're a little safer. On that note, same thing. I have the flipper cleaner. I have never used the scrubby side in my life. I only use the razor blade.
That's how I am, Dev.
Yep. Just less chance of scratches. I'm OCD about not having scratches, so.
Yeah, me and Mage were actually just talking about this before your stream, and that's the reason I'm switching from bare bottom back to this is because I actually find it harder to maintain the bare bottom.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Because I have predators, so you know I have higher bioload, higher detritus output. The whole bottom of my tank was green. You know, it doesn't look like these bare bottom tanks you see on YouTube. I mean, it was green.
Nice.
And no matter how much I scrape and scrub, it keeps a green film on the bottom. And so then I got a tang to help with the little bit of couple little tufts of algae on the rocks and stuff. And I have a fox face, and they want to eat off the bottom before they eat off the rocks. So I said, you know, crap on this. And I went ahead and covered the bottom up.
Hey, what's going on, Jeff?
Hey, what's up, Dev?
Not too much. How you doing?
Everybody? Man, just living a dream.
Excellent,
Jeff,
excellent.
Was that you that said you have the Coraline gravel?
Yeah, and I wanted to just contribute my experience with it because you know, it seems in general, what aside from aesthetic issues, if you don't like the large grain gravel, obviously that's its own thing. But you know, there's a lot of people that say it's incompatible with RAS, with, you know, sand sifters, all that stuff. I went away from the regular sand to this stuff because I run about 80 times turnover flow in my 500-gallon display, and so it was just impossible for me to keep sand in there. And so I got this stuff, and yeah, I've had multiple diamond gobies, sand sifting starfish. I probably have about 15 wrasse in my tank, and they all bury themselves in that large gravel with no issues, no like injuries or anything. And so I would say the only reason to not go with it is if you don't like the look of it, if you just want that fine-grained sand. But otherwise, there's no issues that I've had with keeping it in a reef tank.
Okay.
Okay. So sand sifting starfish fine, snails, conchs fine.
Yep, I have them all in my tank.
Okay.
No issues.
So they
That
basically
answers
just look
my
like,
questions.
I'm just Googling, it looks like little pebbles basically, right?
Yeah, I mean it's basically just like white gravel.
Okay.
And I got my diamond goby I have he's not huge. I would say he's on the large end of like medium, and even he has absolutely no issue sifting.
Oh, make sure you mute the YouTube there, Claudius. There you go. Oh, sounds like you still got YouTube going. Oh, there you go. Yeah, if you guys jump on the Hangouts, just make sure you mute YouTube. Okay, sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
No problem. So yeah, you don't have to have like a monster sand sifting goby to be able to handle that. When I got mine, he was, like I said, I bought him as like a medium size, and he never had any issues sifting that gravel through his gills.
Okay. No, that's good to know, because that's a decent sized grain size for him, so.
Yeah, it's pretty large and doesn't move in high flow, so that's good.
That was always
just my 2 cents.
No, that's great. That's always been my kind of battle, because I hate when you get the giant sand dunes or seeing the bare spots on the bottom. But on the flip side, I always, I like the look of sand, right? So it's always hard to find that balance of the two.
And one other thing to the point you're making before, so when I moved, I threw out all my sand and got new stuff and went 100% this gravel. But at the old house, I had just your normal sand, and in those spots where the flow would always blow it away, I put a couple bags of this gravel in those empty spots, and then kind of shoveled the sand back over it. And for the most part, it was like a barrier, but all the small sand didn't blow away. It kind of held it in place, so you didn't see a whole lot of that larger grain gravel.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like soil holding plants, you know, keeping away erosion kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Now, in theory, wouldn't it? Doesn't the small stuff make its way to the bottom eventually? And kind of do it in the like. Do you notice a separation of the two over time, or does it just stay mixed up enough for buried? It's not a big deal.
You know, it definitely, I think it will. Maybe not 100%, but you know, like every month or two, if you just kind of scoop a little bit back over on top of it. But it's not like a daily sort of thing. I mean, even if you did, you know, once or twice a month. I'm sorry, once every month or two, maybe.
You said the small stuff to the bottom or the large stuff to the bottom?
The small
Like
stuff settles.
The small
Mhm.
stuff
Okay.
kind of settling down.
Well,
below
because
the-
I've heard some people argue it the other way, and that's why I just wanted to make sure, because that was my thought. Because you take a bucket of, you know, like I've laid pavers and stuff before. When you're working with paver sand or anything, the larger particles would come to the top in a bucket.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
As it
if
gets
you
agitated,
like-
they slowly work their ways to separation.
Yeah. If you hate large grain stuff, but if you have empty spots that you hate even more, you know, use the small grain sand that you want. Find those spots that are going to blow away, and then just get a bag of that stuff, put it in, and then cover it again with small grain. And you shouldn't have too much of an issue. I didn't anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys
Good
hear
to
me?
know.
Good to know.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm on break right now. I just wanted to kind of say, yeah, I love using or having a deep sand bed. Just basically, you know, allow me to have that biodiversity and like, for example, like having a huge amount of fish in a small square. I mean, obviously you will collect a lot of waste and whatnot, or uneaten food to settle down quickly. And you know, it's like if you don't have any good flow, that it all just settle and basically decay and whatnot, causing nutrient issues. So basically, I use the sand as a filter. And like I said, you know, it provides a habitat and a safe haven for that beneficial bacteria. So, you know, and then too, you have your live rock and whatnot. But I figured having that natural, like, sea look or whatever, it gives you the opportunity to basically, so to speak, push your limits, like what you can do, like have or whatever, like bio wise.
That extra buffer.
Like, I guess, right, exactly. And
Oh, good old Hangouts dropped out again. So, as we were kind of mentioning earlier, the sand gives you that buffering area, so it gives you a little bit of more wiggle room and stuff, you know, to stabilize your pH or other certain parameters. Hey guys, welcome back.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, for some reason this Bitly link is dropping us every couple of minutes.
Yeah, maybe I'll go back to Discord next time. But gonna mix it up. Figure's worth a try again. We felt like we're overdue to give it a whirl.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely it is a place, for the beneficial bacteria to actually settle and colonize. And the funny thing is that we think of anaerobic and aerobic bacteria to be two totally different strains. It could be the same strain in different environments, and that's adapted to a lower oxygen area.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So I mean, we've seen, and I spoke with Dr. Tim. I spoke with Stacy over there at the ATM. Doing a lot of the bacterial colonies and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, they could change. The characteristics change based on oxygen. Oxygen content and oxygen levels in your system. And what the oxygen does at different levels is it triggers different enzyme reactions. To actually utilize different nutrients, or be be a lot more opportunistic in what's available at that point.
Yeah.
Does
So
that kind of make sense?
no, that does make sense. I was just laughing. Peltrex comment. When have you ever gone to reef in the ocean seeing clean sand under the corals? Wouldn't a more natural look be Miracle Mud substrate? In the tank, you want the more natural look.
Pelt work.
Awesome. I have seen tanks with Miracle Mud. It gives you that kind of like browny, goldy kind of look to it. And hey, it works well. You'd be, talk about buffering, you'd have an excellent one with that. So I have seen it done. I debated it in the Nano. Didn't quite happen because I didn't have enough, but it does work though.
Yep. You just have to watch out for the wave makers.
Yeah.
On that type of substrate.
Very
It will
fine.
lift the tiny particles up.
On
Kind
that
of like at the beach, at the beach, where the waves crash and you get this all muddy look for a little bit.
Yep.
Then it all settles down again.
On that note, too, you just kind of sparked this. You guys were talking about Dr. Timms. I was talking about Reef Palooza, so I'm going to get him on a future live stream. Forget he'll be an interesting one to have on.
Yes.
But
because for the longest time, he was deemed selling snake oil too.
Hey,
But,
I've used...
yep, go ahead.
I've only used the one and only, but I have used his bacteria in a bottle to cycle a couple tanks, and it's worked well for me every time.
Yep.
So at
Totally
least
agree.
that one product I could vouch for because it's worked well for me.
And we've also utilized the waste away as well for a number of our regimens, and they work very, very well too.
Yep.
Gets rid of a lot of the sludge and built up particles in the sand bed.
So he was laughing. He's saying, so would it look more natural? No, I'm going to say it depends where you are. I've been to beaches where it has been very murky, and I've also been to beaches where it's been pristine white sand. So it really depends where you are. Hey, Nasty Nemo. I don't know. I like nice clean sand bed personally. That's my happy place.
Or you could do a combo. Utilize the aragonite and the Miracle Mud.
Yep.
And kind of like what Jeeves was saying is, or whoever was saying it, what's his name? Was it Frank or Reef Jeeves? Utilizing the larger grain sands or the larger pebbles to actually act as a buffer and an entrainment area.
That was,
smaller particles.
I believe that was Jeff from Daily Reefing.
Okay.
Wasn't me.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry, Jeff. So.
I mean, I'll take all the credit you want to give me, but.
No. Feel free to correct me. I'm human. I do make mistakes. Kind of driving right now, so I can't see who's actually doing the talking sometimes.
I like to sound smarter than I am.
Nice.
You're smarter than you give yourself credit for.
There you go.
You know that.
I'm actually shopping cleanup crew right now.
Nice.
Now, with...
What kind are you getting? Are you getting the mama mealworms and stuff like that?
Oh, no. I'm getting fighting conchs and snails.
So,
gotcha.
Orange fighting conches are my favorite. I think they're pretty. They're amazing cleaners. Now on this, for sand bed, keeping it clean, because if you're going to have a sand bed, people want to look pretty, obviously. So a couple of the main ones that I normally use. What's going on, Rico? What's going on, Murphy? So with that, so like sand sifting starfish, like one of those are always great to have. Fighting conches, another huge awesome one. Like they are great cleaners, very underrated. The Staria snails, those are great sandbed cleaners. A couple ones you mentioned earlier, the cucumbers. I mean, they as long as if they bite the dust, I mean they can wreak havoc on your tank. But as long as they're healthy, they, anywhere they go, there's this bright, clean patch of sand behind them. So, sorry, what were you gonna say there?
Oh, I was gonna say, and the fighting conchs look like Gary from SpongeBob.
Nice.
Sorry, it just reminded me.
Yep.
Just watching them, their eyes. They actually have eyes.
Yeah.
And you can see their eyeballs. So cool.
Oh, they're like little aliens. These two eyes popping out.
Yeah.
My buddy will bury his under the sand just to watch him stick the eyes out.
Yep.
I bet you played with his goldfish too, huh?
Probably.
Yep. So what skimmers are you using for ozone? So I'm using my Coral Box skimmer. It works well. It's ozone rated, so I mean it's perfect. I'm still a big fan of Ozone, but as always, I always like throw it out there, but use it within moderation, right? Like less is more, 100% on that one.
Yep. And on that note too, regarding ozone,
Mm-hmm.
you know how a lot of people inject it into their protein skimmer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not understanding why when they're dosing hydrogen peroxide, they're dosing it into the tank as opposed to in the air intake in the skimmer. Because it is the poor man's,
Poor man's ozone.
ozone.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that, to me, I think it's a little bit more controllable and a little bit more within reach, especially for the younger reefers and the newer reefers that don't want to go out and buy an ozone, an ozone system yet.
Now,
is that, oh, go ahead.
How much and how often would one dose of that?
I would say no more than 1 mil per 10 gallons.
Per day? Or per what?
Yeah.
Per day?
Per day.
Okay.
1 mil per 10 gallons per day. Just to, this is once you get all the organics in your stock, you're stocked as much as you want in your tank.
Mm-hmm.
It's a maintenance dose.
No, that's fair.
Better than nothing. It's better than nothing, but it might not be enough.
So,
do you know what I'm saying?
I have a buddy that doses it, but he does it more for like algae prevention, and he swears it keeps his glass cleaner and everything else. So that's why I was kind of curious. I've only ever used it to spot treat algae or certain stuff I want to take out my tank.
Yeah.
Is more of like a, not really preventative, I guess, but yeah, just spot treating if there's something popped up.
Yeah, like a topical. Yeah, do a topical.
Yeah, like, so if I had like a bit of hair algae on a spot or something like that was growing, I'd turn off my flow and just get a couple spot treats, and it would take care of it 99% of the time. It's worked really well in those scenarios, so it's good.
Yeah. And I've utilized the hydrogen peroxide straight out of the bottle into a doser, and I would dose directly into the skimmer intake. So it's actually pulling air in plus the hydrogen peroxide.
Yep.
If that makes sense. Past the we removed the silencer entirely, and we rigged it up to where it would actually still take in air.
Just drop it down the pipe.
1/4 inch. Exactly, just drop it down the pipe.
That's
and
good.
that way the airway isn't restricted.
Yep.
But it's also sucking in the hydrogen peroxide to actually oxidize the bacteria. And it does keep your water cleaner too.
Yep.
So, the benefits of ozone in a liquid form.
There you go.
Basically.
Nice. It's kind of a good call dropping it down the skimmer pipe too. What's going on, Mr. Rico?
What's going on, guys?
So, Mr. Rico,
Hey.
what's your thoughts on sand beds versus bare bottom? What do you prefer?
I prefer sand. I prefer the look of sand. You got your pros and cons, and no matter which way you go, because it is a closed loop system. So, I think there's a lot of benefits, but then you have the negative side of things too. If you, let's say, do too much in the system, things get bound up in the sand, stuff like that. But there's a lot of microfauna, that live in that sand. There's a lot of spaghetti worms. There's all kinds of things that's actually going to take care of that stuff. As long as you don't overload the system, there's plenty of successful reef tanks with sand, and there's some without. I feel like you end up running into a little bit of an issue with trying to get your parameters to stable out a little bit. The sand, the aragonite sand, I feel helps out with buffering.
Yep.
We've talked about that before. Pretty much that's about it. I mean, I think it's to the person's preference, but at the end of the day, to each his own, for the most part. You try both, and whatever you like the best, go with it, and understand that there's pros and cons to anything you do, really.
Yeah. I also find bare bottom tanks to be very, very similar to like white porcelain tile floors. Any little speck of dirt, oh my God!
You're definitely gonna see all the.
Yeah,
you're gonna see all the detritus. You're gonna see the fish waste, poo. That's the downside of one of the downsides of that. Yeah, I mean, but I get you can prevent that. Yeah, you can prevent that. You can create where you can your pumps and stuff to constantly blow that bottom to keep it suspended inside the system as well. So you know, sorry, kids are yelling.
I mean, oh no, not a problem. And you know, you're a RAS man too, right?
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
like your
well,
RASes to take care of a lot of the pests, you know,
Yep.
or potential
correct,
pests.
correct.
So I
That's
mean,
that's the thing as well, you
yeah,
know.
and
But
yeah, and oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, you know, with the sand bed, I'm able to keep more wrasses, more different types of fish that enjoy the sand. You know, and you know, in turn, those fish take care of the corals and the quote unquote the reef that we built for them.
Mhm.
I see the benefits of sand versus bare bottom to be 80, like an 80-20. Like there's 20% of good for bare bottom, but there's more, a little bit more for me in a
Sand.
preference, you know, to
Yeah,
actually have a sand bed. So
I mean,
I don't
I
I
know.
agree.
prefer sand. Yeah, I prefer. I mean, I agree too. You
Mhm.
know,
Hmm.
most definitely. Um, so
I mean, at the end of the
that's
day, it is personal preference. I prefer the look with sand. I like the
Yeah.
options of like certain wrasses and other little creatures that live in the sand and burn on the sand.
Hmm.
correct.
So yeah, I like all the different things.
And I hate cleaning the bare bottom every day. Every time I look at it, or every time I
Yeah.
want to take a photo of it, I have to go in there with the friggin' python and try to suck it out. You know.
That is a great point, though. That's a good point. Everything will stand out if you have a bare bottom
Yeah.
tank, right? When you have one solid color, any particles could stand out. Or in the sand bed, and stuff would just blend in. You'd never notice it.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And I like to go days, or you know, a week or 2 weeks without having to clean the bottom. You know.
Well,
Hmm.
what do you mean by
Yeah.
clean siphon?
No, just stir it a little bit, get some of the bigger, you know, detritus particles from the fish poop and stuff like that,
Hmm.
you know, out of the sand, you know, or uneaten food that might have been, you know, lodged somewhere that got buried by somebody, and you know, just overall maintenance, trying to lower the bioload or the organics in the system, you know, the bioorganics in the system.
Correct.
That you know takes time. You know, it builds up over time, like you said. If you have a lot of fish, you feed a lot.
Yep.
You know, part of the game. It's just how do you go longer periods without having to do, you know, ultimate maintenance of tear down. You know what I'm saying? Lift out all the freaking sand. Lift out.
And there goes the hangout drops. But your floor can be covered in coralline algae. That will happen eventually too. I think once your bottom is covered in coralline or different type of algae, then that would hide it all.
Hmm.
Murphy was just saying
Exactly.
that he had painted the bottom of his white, but I'm like, oh, I'd see every single speck if it was white. Even
Me
more than
too.
black, it'd probably just make it pop. What's the trade-off? So, yes, one
Yep.
benefit is the sand bed is just it hides it all, makes your tank look cleaner overall.
Find a color that matches the detritus color. Find a paint color and paint it that color, like an off-white.
Nice. I got my
I'm
detritus colored
kidding.
sand bed. Yeah. If I ever was to do a bare bottom tank, I think I would probably try doing the fake sand bed, like the epoxy some sand to the bottom, and make it
Mhm.
look like I had a sand bed, just for fun. I think I would go that route if I was to ever go for that. And the only reason
Yeah,
I could
and
think
then
of doing it is if you wanted like crazy high flow for whatever reason. But
that
yep.
would be a cool tank, though.
Hmm. But yeah, I would do that because I still like the look of sand, even if I didn't want a sand bed. Just a bunch of sand, freaking epoxy that in there. It can still be flat, but it still gives you that look of sand.
And once
Um,
again, you can't make too many. You can't make too many valleys and peaks.
yeah. Well,
Otherwise, you still get detritus settling.
you could as long as they're covered in epoxy. Like you can see the tables where it has all the depth to it.
Yep.
I mean, so
Yep.
technically you could. It might look weird with your shadows, but aside from that,
Yeah. Very, very true.
yeah. Hit Rims Aquariums. Appreciate it, man. If you guys are enjoying it, hit that thumbs up button. But yeah, Jay from Ecotech in his little nano challenge tank, I kind of talked him into doing the nano challenge. He has his own little side thing going on, but he did the sand bed epoxy bottom in his. So I've been kind of curious to see how his turns out over time and how it actually looks once it's full going tank. But yeah, I like the idea. I think it's kind of cool. Has anyone asked worldwide corals why they bare bottom their big tanks? I have not, but I did notice that. And I actually didn't even notice it was... I don't think... They're not all bare bottom, just some of them.
No, yeah, they're all right.
But, I mean, they have corals and chalices and spavias and stuff encrusting on the bottom. Like, you almost don't even notice it's bare bottom at first. But those tanks have been running for a while in there. But they do look pretty cool.
Yeah, at the end of the day, sand or whatever, there's plenty of systems been running for years and years and years with sand. I think every now and then it's good to take a little small portion of your sand area if you can get to it. Give it a little stir, release some of that detritus in your water column, and call it a day.
So, Rico, you don't actually vacuum your sand, but you do mix it up once in a while, right?
Oh, yeah, I always hit it and stir different spots, pick up different spots. You'll be amazed at how much detritus in there. And, you know, just a little bit here and there. You know, it's almost gray water that comes up out of there, gray cloud, you know. The sand bed's not deep at all. But, yeah, it's good to release it. And the corals actually like it. I've always noticed when I do that, my corals, the polyps really start to extend because maybe the particulates are so small and stuff like that. It's a natural food too. You know, it's poo. That's what you know, corals eat a lot of that. So.
No, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all free fish food to an extent.
Exactly. That's how I look at it anyway.
No, on mine, probably like once every couple of months, I'll get motivated and I'll vacuum a little chunk of it. So I'll stir up like, you know, maybe 20%, say, and stir it up. And, you know, a bunch go in the water column and I'll vacuum out a section and whatever. And I think it's more just, to me, just more future preventative. Don't have that quote unquote old sand bed syndrome years from now just because it gets a clean periodically.
Right.
Let's reach your... Use a barbecue skewer right before I do a water change and mix it around. Yeah, so same thing, just mixing it up. At the end of the day, it's just getting those particulates up and out of the sand into your overflow and through your filtration rather than it just sitting down there for years and years. But that could be done manually. It could be done with, you know, sand sifting stars, different little sandbed creatures, diamond gobies. It's just the fact of mixing up every once in a while. Now, some people say they leave it, never touch it. I don't 100% buy into that one, but...
I don't know if I mean, I'm with you on that one, Dev. I don't think I buy into that.
Yeah, whether it's us or some cleanup crew.
I'm sorry, your wave, your pumps pushes sand. Okay, say you did,
and even
but your
water
pump
changes.
Even
water changes disturbs the sand.
So
actually,
you know,
I guess. Do you know what I do? Completely off topic, but when I do water changes, I dump it into my return pump chamber, so it doesn't actually affect anything. And I add my fresh water, and then I suck out water.
I've never
I do it backwards.
When I used to do water changes, I never would dump it straight in the main system. I would dump it in the return section. I felt like it was easier on everything. You're not dumping and, you know, letting it, you know, mix that way into the water. And actually, I would do it slow. I wouldn't just dump.
Yeah.
I would try to let the other water mix with it and just make it a more settled transition.
The bucket.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
But what happened if something wasn't completely mixed? You thought was mixed. It's on your corals. Burn the hell out of your corals.
Yeah.
I'm good on that one, dude.
You dump it in the sump. You're safer. Has more time to mix with your tank. And then I add it first. Like most people suck it out. I figure it's less impact to the tank because I don't have to turn off my filtration, my pump, nothing, right? All it does is watch my sump level go up. I'll suck some out of the main tank until I watch my water level drop to my ATO is, and then I know I'm good to go again. Like the corals, nothing missed a beat. If I'm stirring up stuff in the tank, eventually it'll make its way through the filter sock. Clears up anyways. So I don't know. That's always been my kind of strategy. What's going on, Dion?
So, I mean, that's what you know how we do the water changes is you know, over there in the overflow chamber. We would suck water, the old water, out of there. While we're pumping fresh water into the return pump, like you were saying. You know what I'm saying? So all that gunk and stuff, you know, while we're doing the water change, and sometimes we do, you know, very, very minimal though, but you know, sometimes when we do that water change, we suck it out of the overflow, suck up a lot of the detritus that's stuck in the overflow chamber,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
keep that area pretty clean too.
Even though, yeah, I still do that. That's part of maintenance. Most definitely get
People
in there
forget about
because
that box, don't they? People do
you'd be
forget about that
surprised how
box.
much and how thick that detritus is back there.
Oh yeah, nasty, nasty stuff.
Oh yeah.
It is.
Oh
It
yeah.
is. Cluttering it up.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, while we're doing the water change too, we're stirring the sand, we're bubbling at the same time, you know, so that it can, you know, the little teeny tiny bubbles can, you know, get attracted to these detritus particles, lift them out. That's when we actually run a filter sock, you know, as all that crap is coming out, and then we throw the sock, you know, we throw the sock away or we wash it or something, you know.
Yep. Well, on the filter sock note, Jeff has pretty much sold me on the whole benefits of the roller mat style system. So eventually, I think I'm debating if I'm gonna wait till I upgrade my tank or if I should try one on this one. But I like this
I think
idea.
the new roller mat stuff. Did you see that with the that takes the where the filter socks go?
Yep, just pops in that hole.
Talking to Jack and stuff like that. You don't even have to use them all the time. They got bypasses and all kinds of.
Yeah. Oh, so it's cut out. So at Reefapalooza, there was the KLIR, I believe they were, but they were roller mat style things, and those ones fit into your existing filter sock hole. So it's kind of cool. So you don't really have to modify anything. You can just pop it in your system, right as everything already was. Someone was asking, are you using the lunar phase with your Ecotechs? No, my lights just have a very slow ramp down. So they ramp down over about 4 hours. And then it just slowly until eventually it's turned off. I don't run my lights all night. Some people like to run the night light because supposedly the fish can see the rocks, less spooking, jumping. But yeah, I turn mine off at night. It hasn't really been an issue.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can.
Yeah.
Hi, Frank.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. I have I have two questions that I need to ask. Number one is I connect the CO2 scrubber to my tank like 2 months ago. Okay, so because my pH was, I know I shouldn't be, trying to get the numbers, but it was kind of low. So right now I'm reached the 8.2 to 8.3 levels, but my tank is consuming a lot of calcium and alkalinity now. I'm talking about from 15 milliliters to almost 60. So almost, I would say 3 times, 4 times more.
Yes.
Is that normal?
Yes. When you increase oxygen in your system and you're not pumping back CO2 and you're stabilizing your pH, the calcification rates for corals increase exponentially.
Okay. So that means that it's going to be more grow or what?
Yeah, they're going to grow faster. And you're not chasing numbers. Don't let anybody tell you that you're chasing numbers. Just purifying the air and extracting the friggin' CO2, the excess CO2 that's in the air around it. That's not chasing numbers. Chasing numbers is what we called back then utilizing buffer solutions to try to drive the pH up. You're not utilizing pH buffer or pH up to bump up your pH artificially, like hydroxide, sodium hydroxide. I think that's the new thing that somebody came up with.
Oh, okay.
And that's chasing numbers. Utilizing an OH molecule to actually drive up your pH. That's cheating. Whereas all you have to do is just oxygenate and get good gas exchange, and you'll actually hit those numbers, and it only goes up as high as the alkalinity will allow it to.
Yeah, but I don't see the increase in alkalinity because I went for 15 to 30 and then to 50, and still my alkalinity was around 7, and sometimes even reach 6.72.
Yeah, because your utilization has increased.
But
what I'm saying is that the alkalinity, whatever level that you keep it, go ahead.
But it's not going to hurt the corals since the alkalinity is too low?
Because you're constantly supplementing it. You're giving it more alkalinity or more carbonates back into your system.
But even though it's at 6.72,
Yes, but do you actively put in the two-part, the alkalinity?
yes, I have the
portion? Do you put
doser
that in?
doing all of that.
Yeah. So while it's still there, yeah, the numbers could come down a little bit lower, but you're constantly replenishing.
Right.
So
That's
Oh,
what he's
okay.
trying to tell you. No matter what you're doing, you're constantly still replenishing them.
yeah, the
So-
only thing that you need to do is try to catch up until
Mhm.
you
Oh,
get
okay.
back to a nice stable utilization.
Yeah, what I'm doing right now is just trying to increase the level a little bit, dosing manually,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
to increase like about 1 DKH per day. And then I will dose the same amount to see if that will stabilize everything. You know what I mean?
You remember the old C Lab 28, number 28 C Lab cubes?
No.
You know,
Our
they're
parasite
the little
crews.
little
You
calcium
know they
carbonate
don't.
blocks.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh man, no, we still have some of that, and we got the big ones, the ones that they used to utilize in the public aquariums and stuff.
Mhm.
And we
Oh, okay.
utilize that to, if our alkalinity is falling down too low, we take a chunk of that and throw it in.
What is it called,
And
or what is it?
over time, it's a C Lab 28.
And another point that I
Number
already
20.
talked to Rico about it is I will say like 2 months ago or 3 months ago, I did no pump. Okay. So my nitrate went down from 40 all the way to 10, then to 5, and I stopped dosing that. But the nitrate keep going down. At the level right now, I am unable to pretty much measure any nitrate in my tank.
Yeah, because
So I
what you've
removed
done is
75 sorry.
Yep.
So I removed 75 of my algae in my sump, 75%, and I stopped the skimmer at like 6 hours. But
Yep.
I don't see increase in the nitrate.
Yeah.
So
What you've done is you've caused a bacterial bloom with the carbon dosing. So what you've done is you've artificially increased the bacterial population. So your bacterial population is at an all-time high. So it's
Okay.
consistently eating and consuming the
Yeah.
NO3.
It's utilizing
So it's
faster
gonna
than
go
you
on.
can take for it. Yeah.
Exactly. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a point where the bacteria start dying off as well. And you said that you shut off your skimmer. The skimmer is
Yeah,
actually
like
pulling out a lot
during
of that
night, I am
bacteria.
turning off.
Okay. No,
Okay,
that's
but
good. I mean,
do I need to panic
yeah, go ahead.
about my corals not eating enough?
No.
no, you're fine.
No.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, so long as you're broadcast feeding, because I believe that you are, broadcast feeding your system
Mhm.
particulates, they could also get the nitrogen and the phosphates that they need from the food particulates.
No matter the nitrates are really low. I mean, almost zero, I will say.
Yeah, but they
No,
also
because they're
have
feeding.
polyps.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
they don't just eat. Yeah, they don't just eat by absorption. They also
Okay.
eat particulates.
How many times
that
have you
feeding
guys
through.
asked me about my nitrates? Look at my system. I've never get a nitrate reading. Ever,
Oh,
ever,
wow.
ever.
I didn't know that, Rico.
Yes. Can't read nitrates at all.
Mhm.
And even, not to be funny, I even dose a little bit of it anyway.
Oh,
You know what I
okay.
mean?
Mhm.
I wouldn't tell you to
Yeah.
dose it, but I'm just saying, I dose it anyway.
So a lot of people too have found better coloration with higher nitrates too. Like too low of anything is bad. Like you don't
Yeah.
want zero. Like you don't want zero phosphates. You don't want zero nitrates. Like zero of anything is bad. Corals need these minerals. Now crazy high is one thing, but there's a pretty generous range where there's actually not really an issue. And if you don't have algae growing all over your rocks, then who cares? I mean, the only reason most people are trying to keep phosphate nitrate low is to prevent algae, right? So if there's not an algae
Yeah.
issue, then who
Correct.
cares?
Yeah, but I heard something about the potassium nitrate that I thinking to start dosing, but then I see this is gonna make my tank to produce a lot of algae in my display.
Yeah,
But-
if you don't do it controlled.
Right. And second
Yeah,
off, there's
if you
an
don't do it
algae in the
controlled-
ocean. A little bit of algae is not going to kill you.
Okay.
Yep. And it also gives your algae grazers
Yeah.
something to eat in between the feedings.
So it could be fine to dose a little bit of that though.
I'm not going to say that because it's very.
I would not. What I would do is I would.
Oh, we just lost him. Not everybody though.
No, yet somehow I'm still here.
Canadians are safe.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell that was, but
yeah, I don't know. It seems to be a weird hangout thing.
yeah, that it does indeed.
I have no idea what, but yeah, it was pretty good. Seems to be about 20 minutes or so. 10, 20 minutes until it drops out. I'll rejoin again.
Sorry, I lose connection.
That happens.
Yeah, it keeps booting me too. So
It's every.
Cruz, you were giving me advice. Could you repeat them? I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I also dropped out. Hangouts is being a little bit.
Oh, okay.
What I would suggest is, you know how you're extracting the Kato, your macroalgae? What I would do is I would put it into a filter sock into your return pump chamber and let it slowly decompose. It will release the phosphates and the nitrates back into your system naturally.
Got it. So but it's not going to mess up the pump?
No, I said put it in a filter sock.
Oh, okay. Got you.
Let it naturally decompose and leach back all the nitrates and the phosphates that it took out, and then let it get it back in.
Can I ask you something? Are you saying corals not like unhappy or something?
They are not unhappy, but no, at all. They are not unhappy because I can see the rim around my montes. You know, the white rim that's showing growth. That I guess that is they're healthy.
I guess all I'm trying to say is don't worry about what somebody said or heard. If the corals are looking good, leave it alone. Don't start digging into something because if you open up a can of worms, you open up that can of worms, you might not close it and you might not have a tank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
So,
that's one of the reasons why I was suggesting a natural way, because decomposition of Kato takes time.
mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like instantaneous, boom, potassium nitrates. All of a sudden your friggin' nitrates jump up and then your phosphates go out of whack. You know what I'm saying? It's a teeter-totter between the nitrates and the phosphates. If you try, that's one of the reasons why when people are running GFO and they're running their PO4 all the way down to zero, their nitrates rise sky high.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If you friggin' take out the nitrates, the PO4 starts rising higher.
No. It's a weird teeter-totter. Now, just throwing this out there, I know before we were kind of saying, like, not chasing the numbers. Now, corals like stability. They don't like change. If you're chasing numbers and stuff's going up and down, you're annoying your corals. If your corals are happy, you're doing something right, so don't worry about it. Now, we did have a question in the chat. Does potassium or nitrate build up in the rock and sand? I've dosed it and stopped. Potassium will? In the water column. Okay. So the sand and rock won't absorb it. It's just physically the water column will hold it until it's used up.
By the way, guys, thank you so much.
No problem, Frank. Anytime, buddy.
Thank you.
So he's saying he stopped dosing it, got it 25 to 30, and it won't go down. Yeah, so it very well could just be being held in your water column. It'll eventually be used up. Or you could do a bunch of water changes to dilute it. But aside from that, if it's not causing any issues, it'll go down over time.
Yeah, and remember this too. If you want to reduce your potassium, quickly, bacteria does utilize potassium a lot.
But why would you ever want to do that?
You want to?
Why would anybody want?
A little bit too high.
What's a little bit too high?
Oh, go ahead.
Potassium?
Yeah, he said 25 to 30.
Potassium.
Yeah, 25 to 30.
Yeah, I've
like to keep it around.
Wait a minute, 425 to 30, 430?
25 to 30. 25 to 30.
Yep.
Yeah. So I've overdosed trace elements. I've had higher ones before. I just stopped dosing them for a while and let them naturally come down.
Why am I having a hard time understanding about this potassium? So where does potassium supposed to run? About 400.
Potassium? I don't know.
Or strong. Yeah, 400, right?
I haven't tested in so long. I don't even remember.
390.
Huh? Yeah, 400.
390-ish. Yep.
Yeah, I run mine up to 430. There's no ill effects, but that's a Saltwater test kit, and versus that against another test kit.
Yeah, you could show differences.
It runs
And,
higher.
Okay, so the Red Sea Potassium Pro test kit goes for a range of 150 to 450. So it's a pretty big range.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I run about 400,
which
430.
Mm-hmm.
is he using that shows the
Yeah,
pH of the
I guess
35?
that's what I'm trying to get at. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
400-ish. Yeah. But yeah.
Because remember on some of the test kits, Rico, that there's a conversion.
that's why I'm trying to figure out. I would say, yeah, it just threw me for a loop. So I'm just trying to figure out what he's using, and then can somebody do the
what
conversion to see what it is.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep. But yeah, even if you are overdosing some of them, just stop dosing for a while. It'll naturally come down on its own as the corals absorb it.
Correct. I mean, once again,
Mine's get utilized up pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, once again, kind of like what we said in the past, bacteria, anything with a membrane utilizes potassium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you have a lot of corals, great, they'll utilize the potassium. If you have a lot of bacteria, great, they'll utilize the freaking potassium as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you skim it out. Basically, if you're super overdosed and you actually see, your coral shrinking in, not extending, hiding, that's when I'd be afraid, and say, you know what, let me go ahead and induce a bacterial bloom and then skim the hell out of it and pull out as much potassium as I can. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of doing a water change. For me, bacteria concentration and bacteria control, a little bit simpler for me,
Now,
especially in a large system.
Yeah, but I think a lot of the people, sometimes, because we've been in the hobby so long, some things that are simple to us is very hard for others.
True.
Now, in the past, whenever I've accidentally overdosed some trace elements, I mean, the only negative effect I saw was certain colors were more prominent than other colors. So, like, for instance, the easiest one to see was like the red was more overpowering the oranges and the greens. So like, oh, that one's normally yellowy and that was normally green. Now it's looking red. Like, and then it's, stuff started to shift back once it kind of got used up and wasn't oversaturating the water.
Correct. And remember, when people say that they're dosing potassium, they do have to watch out for whether or not it's potassium iodide, potassium bromide, potassium chloride.
Chloride, yeah.
Or
There's,
or potassium sulfate for that matter.
Exactly.
And potassium nitrate, believe it or not. Wow.
And that's what I use.
A lot of potassium.
Well, I use a couple different potassiums, but potassium nitrate I do use.
All right, so.
And everything.
Oh,
go ahead.
Herberto's asking, how long should you run a protein skimmer? Now that is a very big it depends question.
I think a protein, just my opinion, and everybody else can go. My opinion is your proteins, the protein skimmer is only going to skim out what it can, proteins. If it's not there, if it's losing a foam head, then you probably ain't got nothing in there. You probably need to add some fish to the aquarium first off. But if it's got a consistent foam head in the protein skimmer, I feel like just run it. No matter what. I've never had a system, ever not be able to keep a foam head. So that kind of makes me leery about, you can overskim your system. Can you? Because if that's the case, how are you keeping a foam head?
But then again, you feed heavy. Some people don't.
Therefore, I can never overskim the system then. Even though with a big skimmer, and I guess the rule of thumb is what I was trying to get at is, unless you're losing a foam head, don't worry about it.
Yep. And that's one of the reasons why we also
for nutrients, then I guess shut it down for X amount of hours a day. That's all.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, if you're at 0, I would say, on your nutrient levels, I would say, and you're not pulling the foam head like Rico was saying, Go ahead and turn your freaking skimmer off for a little bit. You know, if you have another means of aeration, go ahead and turn that one on while the protein skimmer's off. But other than that, I mean,
What do you?
yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Dev? I want to
All
hear
right,
your
so
opinion.
I was gonna say it really depends. If you have a ton of fish, I think it's gonna be really hard to overskim. If you're running a giant skimmer and you have one fish in your tank, then yeah, you probably can. But
Exactly.
the whole point of a the main goal of a protein skimmer is to take organics out of the water so that you're reducing your phosphates and nitrates. That's kind of his main goal, right? It creates little
Correct.
bubbles and the organics bind to these little bubbles. They make their way up, they pop in the cup, and that's how it removes them from the water column. Now, the secondary use...
And the bacteria, too.
Yep, and the bacteria.
Yep, and the bacteria, too, in the water column.
Yep. So in my tank, it's also a means to suck in some outside air. So, I mean, it's raising my pH, so there's a side benefit. It also is an ozone reactor. So mine does a bunch of different stuff. Now...
Yep.
Now, if I was running a tiny little dinky protein skimmer, there's no way I could ever do it if I had this giant protein skimmer in a low fish load. But like as Rico was alluding to earlier, if you feed really heavy, not an issue. Having a protein skimmer lets you feed heavier. If I didn't have one, I'd probably be a little skimpier on what I feed. So it gives you more buffer room in that. Now, I've seen other people, you know, employ a giant Refugium and not even use a skimmer. So that's another aspect, right? Like, if...
Mm-hmm.
It does a job. So it's either pulling in air, it's helping to oxygenate your tank by driving out CO2, or it's helping reduce certain materials. So you can do it through an algae, you can do it through a skimmer. You know, some people run theirs part-time. On one of my nano tanks in the past, I think I ran it 12 hours on, 12 hours off, just for fun, because it didn't necessarily need to be running 24 hours, because there wasn't like a big issue with any nutrients. So you can kind of play with it. And now, I've thought about running mine part-time, but at the same time, now that I use it to suck in my outside air, I know I'd see a drop in pH. So...
Yeah. But, I mean, the only place where I see that it's an issue of over-skimming is when they're actually doing wet skimming.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? They're pulling out water, you know? So at that point, you know, are they really skimming, or are they just sucking out water just to add top-off back to, you know, make up for it?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's pulling out some of the proteins, but it's also pulling out your seawater and everything else that you're actually trying to keep inside the water column.
Good point. I'm also a huge fan of a very dry skim. Like, I could probably empty my skimmer once a month, and I could probably go longer than that, to be honest.
Yep, that's how I like it.
Yeah, my eye goes super dry. Like, I want that thing to, like, just be making it enough to do its job. I make my skimmer work hard.
Exactly. And I get that muddy looking sludge around the neck.
Yep.
A lot.
It's just like caked on there.
Mm-hmm.
That's how mine is when I clean it.
And it looks like that mud that it's that mud that what is it called? You remember that movie Ghost?
Jeez, what do I turn on my mic and everybody's gone? What on?
Scared him away, man.
I did, yeah. I was just going to chime in with the same thing, is that I dry skim now. That was the whole thing when I was on one of my streams building my stand.
Yeah.
Right, was to get the level up, because if you watch the video where I tested the pump and shot the water in my face, right? Right? It was because that was failing. I kept getting more and deeper water, not realizing that, that it was the pump. And then once I fixed it, it's like, geez, why am I emptying my skimmer cup daily?
Yep.
And it's like, it's not high enough. So I kept stacking it, and I got to a point where, what's going to happen? It's just going to fall over. So I had to rebuild the stand, right? So yeah, it's so I went from wet skimming to a very dry skim. Yep. You know what I mean? So yeah, it does make a difference in that regard, right? So, and I have a heavy bio load of fish. Yeah, I'm going to skim more. I'm never going to shut mine off.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean?
It's all dependent. Yeah, it's all dependent on the bio load. And what you're putting in organically.
And if you're a sucker for feeding your fish. So
I am.
I know.
Yeah. So if I was to run my skimmer part-time, I would strategically probably turn it off more in the evening for a while, and then I would probably dose all my trace elements and stuff at that time when the skimmer was off, so there's less chance of being skimmed out. That's how I'd strategically time it all if I was to only run my skimmer part-time.
Yeah, I would also turn on a different aeration type. You know what I'm saying, Dev?
Yep.
Like a different aerator.
Yeah, so you can still...
You know, just to keep the oxygenation and the gas exchange and the gas turnover and stuff like that.
Yep.
But
now, I am toying with the idea of trying that Kessel H380, which I know can give me a nice big pH boost as well. Just out of curiosity, I'm curious to try it. So we'll see. So I might try that. And if I do, then maybe if my pH is kind of crazy high, maybe I will turn off the skimmer for a little while just for fun and see what happens. But I don't know. Experiments. Always good.
what is the H380?
It's
for
their...
those who haven't heard.
It is their Kessel's horticulture light. It's what a lot of people use. It's kind of an overly priced Refugium light. Supposedly it grows Chaeto like no tomorrow, like crazy. So,
Yeah, but I think your UFO and most of these other lights for the
A little bit more control.
oh yeah, like you
they're
can
not-
buy the UFO light for $50, and it's
Right.
probably 80% of what you're getting out of your $300 Kessel light. So
Exactly.
my only justification is that this will be paid for of like 90% store credit. That's the,
And it would be something new to play with.
yes, that doesn't hurt either. I would have a hard time buying it straight up. I don't know if I could justify it when there's so many great lights like the UFO you can buy for like $50.
Yeah.
Right.
So it'd be
Or
hard.
some of the regular PAR 38 floodlights as well.
Yep. And I had that
The wide
90 watt
spectrums.
Evergrow light, which was like $130 light. That thing could trade like crazy. Like, can it actually go better than that? I don't know. It's hard to say. UFO in the Kessel UFO grows more Chaeto. Just saying. There you go. So Ryan's saying that his UFO grows more Chaeto. I've always been curious to know, just because I've had a lot of, I've had the $30, I've had the $100 kind of China versions of the light. So I've been curious. Is it actually better? As a company that makes horticulture stuff, will it actually grow better than just the China version of it? I don't know. I'm
See, my question to that, though, again, Dev, is once you start seeing it grow, do you feed more? Or do you start dosing in more NO3 and PO4 into your system, which is, further enhances the growth? Do you know what I'm saying?
I know. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
It's hard to quantify 100%. But
It is.
I know. I'm
Just
a little...
with regular feedings.
Exactly. So I don't know. I'm a bit curious. And the only reason that I may potentially do this is just because I have been slowly stocking up my credit. And there's nothing else I really need right now. So
Yay.
yeah.
Love store credit.
I know, right? It's the best.
Even with a store credit, just knowing the fact that UFO are just downright, like, I don't even know if it's even worth justifying, even if you had a 98% store credit. I think that you could spend that money totally on something a little bit better towards, obviously, because we do have YouTube channels. We do, like to have these great conversations about certain products. I'm sure there's something else versus that. That, to me, honestly, even if I got it for 98 for myself.
Yeah.
I think I would have to invest that in something else because Chaeto's Chaeto. If it's growing, the light's doing what it needs to do. Why would you need to make it grow any faster or anything? It's only going to grow to the nutrients level in the first place in the system.
And my Chaeto reactor's doing the job now, to be honest. It's not like I need
exactly. Yeah, I'm just.
I would.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I would spend my money on that rotating filtration unit.
Yeah, one of those is on my. That's on my future hit list too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anything, something like that or something. Yeah. Sorry, Deb, but I
just
ruining my new toys.
I think
you said no new toy for you.
I just think there's enough videos out there about that. There's been enough talk about it. I just don't think that would be wise in your regardless 98% paid for, not even wise to even spend your money on any of that credit towards that. But
to get an increase of growth.
Lost it. Cut yourself off.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Yeah, I know. So I don't know. I'm still debating
that new Bubble Magnus roller filter sock.
Well, there's a few different brands I was looking at, but yeah, it's basically the roller style where it moves the fleece through it whenever it gets clogged up.
What's the you know what the replacement cost is for the rollers?
Nope. I still gotta find all that, and I mean that's half the decision is which one's decently affordable to Doesn't
In
cost
the
you a
after,
fortune replacement.
yeah, for actually getting the replacements.
I'd spend a little more up front if I knew it was going to be cheaper long term for whatever one, right? So
Yeah.
I always look at what's my best bang for my buck overall.
I went in and actually measured mine.
Yeah.
See if I could fit one in, and I have 2 inches of clearance. 2.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh, right. And it's like, would it be better off to switch to a Herbie if I'm going to do that though?
Yeah.
A 2-drain? And I'm like, can I talk the wife into putting one over the back of the tank? I might get it. Maybe.
At Reefapalooza, KLAR, Clear, whatever there.
Yeah.
They had a funky one which actually fit in an existing filter sock hole, which was kind of cool. So that was kind of a clever way of doing it. The one I was looking at was the Clara C, just because I like the look and the shape of it. Now I am going to be doing my little mini upgrade in the near future. So I was like, well, I could just, design that into the sump to fit it. So I don't know. I'm debating which way to go.
I was just going to say, aren't you doing a new tank? So just add it to the setup, right?
Yeah.
Make it a lot easier for you, really. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
I do like the idea of putting it over the sump, though, that if something goes wrong, it's mostly going into the sump.
Oh, exactly, right?
Well, I was seriously thinking about using polyfilter and just rolling it.
Yeah.
Rolling it daily. You know what I'm saying?
You mean minutely?
No.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking, Bruce.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
there is manual versions. I'm too lazy for that. I need automated. That's the whole point of getting rid of filter socks, is so you don't have to do it. Now, at the flip side, I was debating just ditching the socks and seeing how it is sockless, but I have the side future goal of not cleaning the glass one day. And I think that the roller / filter, roller, poly, whatever the heck you want to call it, stuff will get you a step closer, right? Because you're removing these particulates and stuff before they break down in the water, which is going to be less stuff to leach. Yes.
Yeah, but the caveat on that, having a filter floss or a filter sheet or something like that, is that it won't allow for the copepods and the other microfauna to actually pass through.
Well, so what I was thinking is my main drain would have this, and then my secondary trickle drain would just be free-flowing. So, I mean, it wouldn't be 100%, but it'd be a good chunk of it. The majority of the water would be filtered through, but not 100%.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel that this is a step closer to my goal of less glass cleaning.
Do a 50-50 bypass.
Yeah, maybe. So we'll see.
I'm kidding.
You know what I like about glass cleaning? It really helps you dial in nutrients. That's what I...
Fair. Now, eventually, my peninsula tank will actually be a peninsula tank, and it's going to be at the top of the stairs, so it's going to be a pain to clean that other side of the tank. This is why I have a goal of reducing the need to clean the glass.
Ooh, yeah.
No, I get it.
Yeah,
I
so
get it.
I have this future goal. Like, it's going to be there in a year or two, so any way I can do to not have equipment on the peninsula end and to not have to clean the glass is getting me closer to my future setup.
You're still going to have to clean that glass, right?
Yeah, but if it's only once in a while, it's not a big deal. I don't want to be daily, every other day cleaning it. If I do like once a week or something, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I had a dream.
Well, not just that, just coralline algae and stuff like that, spores popping up, and probably, stuff like that. Maybe once a week.
That's what I
don't
mean.
know.
Yeah, if I only had to clean it every week or two, week and a half, once a week I could deal with. But yeah.
Right.
I got a dream that
you on
involves
that.
crystal clear glass one day.
Don't they got that robot that we could put in there? Remember seeing that running around or whatever? Just constantly clean the glass.
I heard that thing was like ridiculously loud. Like,
it's to me, the robo snail doesn't know that your corals are growing closer to it every day.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
so it's a robo snail and a fragger. I like it.
2 for 1. Rico, you just walk into the tank, like, oh, there's my frags. Pick them off the sand bed, pop on a little glue, some frag plugs done. Yep. So I don't know. They have that new one that has a little camera that looks super tiny, but I haven't actually seen it for sale anywhere. Or have an idea how much it is, but so I don't know. We'll see. But one day we'll get there. You gotta have goals, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
What do we got? 4:30. All right, probably about 15-20 minutes. I'm gonna call her quits for today. I still gotta go pick up the wife in a bit.
All right.
If you do want to jump in for a few, Nick, there's the link. So yeah, so one day, no cleaning the glass. Just get off the odd bit of core line here and there. Robert, actually, the other guy, fella I've been talking to, he's my sole Patreon supporter. So if anyone wants to support the channel, I've never actually said this, but I started a Patreon. So if anyone wants to show the channel some love, patreon.com/ReefDudes. But Robert, he's a great guy. I've been talking to him. He has a big, beautiful tank. One day I'm gonna have to show it off. But he has an acrylic tank, and to get rid of the core line and not dealing with scratching the acrylic, he actually uses, like, he magnets something on the side of the glass and puts a bit of peroxide or whatever in there and dissolves or vinegar, whatever he uses, and pre-dissolves the core line so that it comes off like nothing. I was like, that's a clever way to do it.
Hell yeah.
I mean, it's a lot more work for sure, but it seems pretty cool. It's like, that's a great way to do it, especially with acrylic, because I mean, I'd be extremely paranoid about scratching that.
I'm just looking. Is this yellow tank taking a shot?
Oh, they were singing about a tang in a glass, and that's their icon they made up.
Yeah.
I think they were extreme playing on the whole tank police thing.
You know it's gonna happen. Tang in the glass.
Might be. You never know.
What's going on, Nick?
I love how they
Rico, how you doing, buddy?
took the time to add
All right.
sand.
I'm just looking at this
and
thing, man.
Aptasia.
I'm like, that's how I feel. I need a shot.
Yep.
Hey Dev, you know with the acrylic, you know
Yes.
something that is not as hard as the thing you're trying to clean, it can't scratch it, right?
Say that
Do you know
again.
what I mean by that? You know you got two materials. If one is not as hard as the other, then it can't scratch it.
Yeah, like I know they have special blades for it and stuff.
Yeah,
but...
with acrylic you could just get another piece of acrylic that isn't as hard, and then you can make a blade out of it.
Yeah, I'd still be paranoid. I'm not gonna lie. I would have
That's
a hard.
the only thing about it, the acrylic, man. It's I don't know. I feel like they're too. I know I'm kind of rough when it comes to cleaning, like, you know, on stuff or not, you know, too caring about getting, you know, sand and stuff like that. I seen what Jeff went through daily reefing with his, and I've seen it over the years too. It's just like, oh, that would bug the hell out of me every time that I would put a scratch in it. Trying, you know, serious. I don't know. I like it because it's very light, considering, you know, when you want to go really big, it's a lot lighter, but it's the whole scratching thing that just does it for me. I don't know.
Hey Rico, do you remember that big tank I was on about, that 8 foot by 5 by 6 foot? That was the acrylic one. Yeah, that one that got collected today. So I was pleased to see it go, I must admit.
Oh, finally got it up out of there, huh?
Yeah, I was worried about scratching it and shit. So yeah, I was happy to see that one go. I must admit. I agree. I agree. I was happy to see it go undamaged.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always just been super duper paranoid. Mr. Ketchup. I've had a system running since January 2017. Nothing's really growing. Have a dosing units. Everything's 100% steady. Would temperature cause corals not to grow?
Nope. It's just the corals. Trust me. I've had my shot of quite a few corals that just will sit there, not grow, not encrust. They look at you like you done sold something, and then that 1 year mark just seems to, they just take off. I've had quite a few corals. I got some corals still to this day that are just like that. You just leave them alone. Leave them alone. They're not dying. They're not losing color. They're not doing anything. Leave them alone. And when the time is right, they'll kick into gear. I have damaged them just to get them to start that repairing process and cause them to kick in gear. With no bad results from that, but just leave it alone. It takes time. Some things just take time.
I've even had zoas where there's one I literally had 2 heads for like 3 years and they did nothing, and then one day and now I have like 50 of them. Like literally it's like nothing like for like 2 years, and then one day they're like, okay, we're happy now, and they start growing.
Yeah,
So,
I think it sometimes could be just the chemistry within the water, even though you got great numbers that you physically could see. But what about the numbers and other elements that are in the water that might be being utilized by other things, the same things that they might need at that particular moment, and just when those other things are done utilizing, maybe that.
yeah, so on that similar note, like in my nano tank, I have my favorite blue millie, which I freaking love. I know you guys seen that. I showed it off earlier. But that guy, I put a chunk of him in. Yeah,
Dev.
I know. That's why I'm talking.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I've had in my 20-gallon nano tank, I have some frags I've added. They've done absolutely nothing. Like they're in there, they're just hanging out, no growth. But on the flip side, I have like my blue millie, and that baby's encrusting on the rock and is growing like crazy, right? Like it's you can't notice on one, and the next you're like, okay, that's been a huge difference. So certain corals are just if they're happy, they're happy. If they're not, nothing happens. But
Sorry, I'm about to kill this hangout.
I know it's always a battle. But yeah, so like as I say, Enrico, like on my nano tank, like I've had 2 corals. One I add, you can barely tell anything. The next one is encrusting. It's like tons of encrusting on the rock.
And a coral that was frag of a frag, right?
Yeah, and they're both just 2 frags I took out of my main tank. One's exploding and the next is just surviving.
Exactly. Explain that one. Same one. Yeah.
So I don't know. I've decided I'm the Millie Whisperer though, because Millies are always happy.
Yeah, I got a blue millie that's always finicky. It's always gave me a problem.
Yeah.
Takes forever for it to want to grow, but hey.
I got my one new little purple with green polypy one, and that guy is doing pretty good. It's all happy so far, so hopefully it starts encrusting and growing soon.
Right.
But yeah, no, certain corals just will or will not like your tank. Like, it's just one of the facts of life with reefing, and it could be a certain turning point where I've had corals like deepwater mackerel. I added it to my tank 3 times. It just kept dying. I was like, what the hell? And then eventually...
I was just talking about that. I think it was yesterday that I've had corals out the gate that just didn't want to be there.
Yep.
And I would keep buying them. They keep dying. Wait a couple years, put it in, that same... and then all of a sudden it wants to be... it thrives.
Yep.
It's crazy. Crazy.
Nope. Yeah, same with Deepwater Aqua. That was one for me. Like I had that Hawkins Anchinata. Like I added that thing at least 3 times and it died. And finally, last time
You're
I've added it...
talking about the same one I'm talking about. That thing...
It's finicky. But now it grows like crazy. It's probably one of my biggest corals. Yeah, and I couldn't keep it alive for the first year.
About a month ago, so it's. I do have a frag of it to grow out for the next tank, but that's the one. That one, and the Red Dragon sometimes would do the same thing. Like
I'm still fighting Red Dragon. That's my next one. But the Hawkins Anchinata is probably the biggest coral in my tank right now. The thing grows like crazy, and I could not keep it alive for the first year. So.
Yep.
Sometimes your tank just hits a point, or the coral and the tank they're on the same wavelength, and life is good again.
Exactly.
Yep. So you never know. Honestly, it's one of those things. If it doesn't work, maybe just say whatever. Try a different species of coral. 4 or 5 months later, try another frag. Maybe it'll like your tank.
Yep.
Oh no.
You'd be surprised.
Very true. All right, guys. I do think I'm gonna call it because my wife is still sick and I gotta go pick her up. But
all right, good stream, bud.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for joining, and thanks everybody in the chat for joining today. A little all over the place. It was pretty solid hour of on topic, and if you guys enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button. If anyone really loves me and they want to support the channel, I did start a Patreon, patreon.com/ReefDudes. And aside from that, hit that thumbs up button, guys.
That's right.
All right, I will talk to you guys later. So have an excellent evening.